Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, a show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy, and today we're going to be talking about Hollow Knight. More importantly, that I went back and had another crack at Hollow Knight. This was always going to be a difficult video to do because on my previous video, there are people that definitely agreed with me, and there are definitely people on that video that did not agree with me. And I will say this, I don't think I did the best job in purveying what I wanted to purvey point-wise in that video. And I'm hoping to do a better job of that today, because I replayed it. Now first off, the footage in the background of this video is me recording a brand new start, right? I recorded about an hour of gameplay, and I just basically was like, I'm just going to record it all, because somebody accused me of some random thing last time, of like randomly just wandering around. This is from my current playthrough that I was in the process of doing. So everything that you're going to see on screen is just me playing through the game, just like as if I was playing it. Okay, so I just want to clear that up. So Hollow Knight. If you don't know, I did not have the best experience with this game. It wasn't a game that I really enjoyed, and I could see at the time that there was a good game there, but it had a lot of problems. And today I want to go over like the positive and the negative, and kind of try and dive deeper into why there are things in this game that don't gel with me. I can say from playing this game again for a second time, one, I got significantly further, so that's good. Two, I realised that this just isn't a game for me. There are things in this game, the way the game's designed, that don't gel with what I want from a Metroidvania, right? I'm not here to say that this game is bad. I do not think that Hollow Knight is a bad game. But Hollow Knight definitely does things that makes it very difficult for new people getting into Metroidvanias to enjoy. I think that's fair, and we're going to go over that stuff today. First off, before we get into any of these points, I will say this. I had fun with the moment-to-moment gameplay of Hollow Knight. The fighting enemies, learning enemy patterns, the mini-bosses, the boss fights that I got to, all of that stuff is great. It feels really good. The main character feels good to move and run around and all that sort of stuff. Honestly, like, that's the best thing about it. And had the game not had other things that didn't gel with me, or I struggled with, I think I would stick with this game significantly more. Just to be open, I got to the City of Tears, I got to the place above it, like the Soul Forge. I can't remember what it's called. Like, there's a place just like in that area we have to fight a Soul Master, I believe is the boss. That's where I got to this time around, whereas originally I think I only did Hornet Fight 1, and then I got lost. So I had a better idea. But the game itself, like the visuals are really, really nice. There is good music in here. The difficulty of the game was never an issue for me, so I never really had a problem with that. A lot of it was just, there are other things in the game that are either part of the game or surround the game that aren't the moment-to-moment gameplay that I struggled with. So I want to start, this video is going to be in two bits. I want to start off with what I consider to be actual problems with the game. I've got 2 points to make on that. And then I've got personal problems. So I want to make it clear, right? Actual problems are things that I think are, that would benefit if the game had changes. Rather than me sitting here and with my personal problems, which are more things that I didn't personally like. Cool. So, number one problem with the game that I genuinely struggled with, and I think this is going to depend on the player. The way the Hollow Knight works is that obviously your main character emanates light. You have a light source around you, and you see, and on the edge of the screens it's darker. Some areas of the game where that are darker, it can be very difficult to judge some platforms or even notice some of the platforms in the environment. This is most notably in the second area, which is like the green path or something like that, it's called that, where there is a lot of foreground and background elements that overlap, and there are a lot, then the lighting is very specific, which causes sometimes it difficult to see platforms in the dark or to judge where they are. This, in my opinion, is definitely something that is a problem with the game. This doesn't affect every single area. The two areas that I experienced this with were the green path and then the fog place with the jellyfish and like, I think it's like fungal stuff as you're going down there. but no, not the fungal place, the jellyfish area, like a bluey kind of area. And so these two areas have moments where I couldn't quite fathom out where some of the platforms were, or I couldn't quite fathom out the placement of foreground and background elements. This is always an issue, because whenever you have a game, 2.5D games have this a lot. When you have a 2.5D game, you really have to make it obvious to the player what's foreground, what's background. More often than not, there's some elements that can kind of get a bit blurred, and that can be a little bit confusing. What I found here was that the platforms, the small little bricks and things that you jump on, or little bits of land between the big chunks of land, they're not always defined. Like, for example, if, let's say that we drew a black outline around those things, alright, they'd be a bit too obvious probably, but you could tell very instantly that is a foreground element that you can jump on. Because the game's done in layers, and because it's hand-drawn, you have like a very, very front layer, which sometimes scrolls in front of things. You have a back layer, you have multiple back layers, and then you have the layer that your character's on. And sometimes these things can clash, right? Now, the only real way you can fix this is by probably adjusting the gamma levels, which I did tweak around and had a little mess around with, and that in some instances helped. But this is a kind of one of those things for side-scrolling platformers. Always make it obvious to what you can interact with and what you can't. Now, some people are not going to have a problem with this particular element of the game, right? Because they just either they know the game well enough, or it's not something they're going to come across and struggle with. Me personally, I didn't do well with the combination of the light in these areas, plus, especially in the green path area where there's so much foliage. Sometimes it's just really difficult to see anything. Now, you could say that's part of the challenge, which, yes, to a degree, but I would never hinder the player in a way that would cause them to struggle with the platforming like that. Like, sure, have the smaller platforms, have enemies and stuff, but always make it clear to the player what those platforms are and where they go. Now, as the game goes on and you do get upgrades and things like that, like a standard Metroidvania, you do have things that can potentially help with this, but very early on, this is just a very visual struggle. And again, this is what I consider to be an actual problem with the game. I think it would be great if there was a way of tagging those things, so it was a lot more obvious. Alright, sure, artistic intention might be slightly ruined, but I'd rather take that over, struggling to see the platforms, because that is a point of contention. Again, not every area, not the first area, not the City of Tears. Those areas, the color scheme does maybe have an impact, but it's a lot to do with how like light and dark the area is and how much you emanate that light. So personally, that was the first thing that I think really was a struggle. And while it didn't affect my entire play, it's still a thing that I think should be discussed. If we're going to talk about the game, if there was a chance of the developers going back and tweaking things, I think a toggle, black outline, something like that for those platforms would be perfect. The second issue, again, a bit more, this to me I consider a problem because there's no toggle for it, but not everybody's going to have the same problem with this. And that is when you take a hit. If you played the game, you know that when you take a hit, I turn the screen shake off, but you get that sound duct, that like sucking sound, like everything goes for about a second. I find that incredibly distracting. I actually wish that there was a toggle for it to turn it off. I'm totally fine with just the visual indicator of getting hit and like all the effects that happen, and you flash for a few seconds. But every time you get hit and you get that sort of slight stun stop, and then that suction of sound, it's really like, it's more distracting than it is actually helpful. And I think it's one of those things I would love there have been a toggle in the game where I could just be like, turn that off, so I just visually see, like, the sound doesn't go, but I just hear the boom sound, and the sound carries on like normal. To me, far less distracting, and that's like kind of a minor point to it. So those are the two things that I think could actually help, and my experience personally. And I think those are things that you could easily change in a game if they were still working on it. Probably not going to happen now, right? But let's get into personal problems, and I want to say this, right? The reason why I'm breaking these down into personal problems is because I know that this is the sort of stuff that is going to affect other people. This isn't just like, I just didn't like this, blah 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 blah. No, it's like I've actually thought about what the issue is with these things. Okay, not going to affect everybody, that's fine, right? It is more of an opinionated point that I'm about to make, but I think that there's a lot of these things that I'm about to go into where if some of this stuff wasn't there or had been done slightly differently, I don't think I would be so sour on the game in these aspects. Because like I said, really, really solid moment-to-moment gameplay. It just feels like a lot of the stuff around that is what causes my issues, personal issues with the game, right? And we've got to start with the map. The map is definitely a point of contention for this game, and you're either going to love it or you're either going to hate it. How the map works is essentially you go and find, I think it's Conifer, I think his name is, and you can buy the map from him when you see him in this area. It goes up in price as you go into different areas, which I have a little bit of an issue with, but fair enough, right? That's where you spend your money on. Save up, buy the map. Or you can go back to town at some point. I don't know when he disappears. I think it's like something triggers in each area. He'll get leave and you can go back to the town and buy the map. So, beginning of the game, you have to find Conifer to get the first map. You then have to get the quill, which is another item that costs, to fill in the map every time you get to a bench or to fill in like the areas. And then on top of that, you then need to buy a map marker, which is part of these trinkets, which takes up a slot, so that when you open the map, you can see where you are. For a first-time player, this is not good. And the reason I say that is because the first 20 minutes of my playthrough of this time round was get money to buy the map, to get the quill, to get the map marker. 20 minutes of a start of a game that already doesn't give you much direction, right? And then basically, if you are a new player, you're going to want the map, at least for the first area, to understand how it works and be able to explore and fill that map in, right? Filling the map in is actually kind of fun. That bit I quite like. But you've got to get the map, because you don't have one. You have no map of that area. You have to buy the quill. You have to buy the map marker, which then also takes up a slot on your charm, which I don't necessarily agree with. If you are a returning player, none of this matters, because a returning player, somebody who likes the game, you're probably not going to buy the map marker. You'll probably buy the map and you'll probably buy the quill, but you don't need to worry about the map marker, because you're just like, yeah, I know these areas, I know roughly where I'm going, you just open the map, blah blah blah, right? But for this is not a beginner friendly mechanic, right? This obviously is a game that you would recommend to somebody who's into Metroidvanias that wants more of a challenge. That I completely get, and I think that is fair, right? If you want a challenge, this game's got it. But this, for new players, people that are getting into this game, the map parts of it just feel irritating. And I don't think everybody's going to have that problem. I think some people aren't going to care, and that's absolutely fine. But because you have to buy the map of each area, there are times when you are running around in an area and you don't get a map for ages, or you have to figure things out, and you just have no sense of where you are, right? And there are other things that can compound this, but it is just a bit annoying that your map doesn't autofill like in most other Metroidvania games. And it's just one of those mechanics where I just think to myself, like, why was this changed, right? I understand this stuff being for like an say there was like an expert mode. This sounds great for an expert mode, no map, or you have to like go for it, whatever. But I feel like as a beginner, you would want to at least have a basic idea of where you're going and filling in. Okay, you might still have to buy the map marker, but the fact that it doesn't autofill, like you go to a new area and it doesn't start like filling in. You've bought a quill that fills it in anyway, but because you haven't bought the base map, you can't fill it in. So it's like it's weird back and forth that you need Conifer's basic map before you can start filling in areas anyway, which I find really strange. It's not so much that the map itself, like this mechanic, I feel like it's just done better in every other game. Every game that's come out since. Metroid Dread does a better job of the map. Prince of Persia does a better job of the map. Pretty much any other Metroid game will auto-fill in the map when you don't have the map data. And I think that's just like, it feels like, and I'm not saying it is this way, but it feels like it's designed to be frustrating for no good reason. Apart from artistic intent, which when it comes to players and things like that, I can never put artistic intent over practicality. And so some people are going to love the fact that the map works the way the map works. I personally hate the map, and I think this is one of the worst things about this game. Had the map still auto-filled in when you went to new areas, right, I don't think this would be a problem at all. But I really dislike the fact that I've got my first 20 minutes of my game, for a beginner, going around and collecting map bits to basically make the map work like a normal map. That feels unnecessary. Some people, again, like the challenge. Fair enough. For someone like me, not something that I can personally enjoy. And that kind of brings me on to the first hour of this game in general. This game gives you very little direction, which again wouldn't be a problem if there weren't other things around. But I really don't think that the first hour of this game is good. I think the game does get better. Once you get some of the movement upgrades, wall jump, dash, things like that, the game starts to open up. The game starts to feel so much better. But the first hour, like, luckily I kind of knew what I was doing from my last playthrough. But I was like, this doesn't feel very good for new players. I don't know what the game's trying to teach people by being this so obtuse. I understand that being this obtuse for a second playthrough, a third playthrough, so on and so forth. But it just, I think it's one of the worst starts to a Metroidvania game that I personally have played. I think the game gets better, but should you expect the player to, if the player's got 2 to 3 hours, and they kind of get through that, at that point you have to make a decision on whether you want to continue playing the game. I think it's worth it, but I wouldn't say it's an easy start. Like, most other games that I've played that are in this style, I feel like the intro's a little bit more linear, just to help players understand what they're doing, and then it kind of goes a bit more, not directionless, but opens up for the player to go. I felt lost a lot of the time playing this, which, the game does give you little hints of like where you go, but I still had to look up a couple things because I was like, well, where am I actually going? What are my goals? And this game doesn't do that. This game wants you to take your time, and it wants you to explore, but I think the problem is there's got to be a line somewhere of like just going, you need to find, even just being like, you need to go to this area. So let's say you need to go to the City of Tears. Just a line from someone or something that says, this is the City of Tears, like, go something or other, like, in that direction. Doesn't need to show you where it is on the map, you just need to find that area. And that's, again, it's definitely a choice, right? I'm not saying people are wrong for liking the game as it is, right? But I'm like, for me personally, it's definitely a choice. I definitely don't like what feels completely directionless. And that's from talking to the characters. Like, I made sure to talk to all the characters I came around and talk to and things like that to try and get as much lore and things going on, and also hope to see if there were things in the game that would point me in the right direction. Like, when I first played it, I didn't really understand the whole map thing. This time I got that fine, found Conifer, found the money, spent it, all that good stuff. But it's definitely something that makes me sit here and go, well, I wouldn't recommend this as a beginning Metroidvania to somebody. Like, I just don't think this is a game that has that best start. This is a game that you give to someone who's played Metroidvanias, wants a challenge, maybe enjoys getting lost, right? Fair enough. But I'm pretty sure that the people are going to be absolutely split on that first hour. Some people are going to bounce off. I bounced off it last time. I bounced off the game now for different reasons. But it's not a good intro. And that's probably one of the things I would argue like quite heavily on, is that the intro to this game does very little to really help the player. It should get more difficult. The game is difficult, and I've not found it to be unfair difficulty, except for one thing that we'll get onto later. But like, ultimately, the game just, all it needs to do is just go pop. That you need to head in towards this place. You need to head towards this place. Just tiny, like, more hints of like the names of the places, so you know what you're looking for when you find it. Moving on from that, there are a couple of other points that I want to bring up that I feel are definitely like based on decision. You're either going to like these things or you're not. Let's talk about checkpointing. So this is actually the reason why I quit the game the second time around. I got to a boss. It was like Soul Master or something. And this was based on an enemy type that I already was struggling with, which was this teleporting dude that always moves away from you, fires off these explosive things. Like, the projectile they fire isn't too bad, but trying to hit the enemy and then teleporting around, a little bit frustrating, a little bit annoying. But I got to a point where you checkpoint on the benches. Anyway, I go through all this big area, I get to a boss fight. This game, unlike now, I will say, because of the time it came out, I am now used to games checkpointing before the boss or having a save point before the boss, right? We saw this with things like some of the older Metroid games, we see this with some of the newer games. Just in general, a lot of games will checkpoint because of the whole run back idea, and I get that there are elements of this game that are inspired by Souls-like games, like getting your money back when you die, and the idea of running through the areas to get to the boss. The issue here is that I'm already doing a difficult boss. like learning the pattern, learning why this boss is, there's no health bars either when you fight the bosses, but you're trying to learn it. Being sent as far back as I was, because dropping the money I don't care about. I'm past caring about the money dropping mechanics, right? I don't like them, but I don't care about it. I'm like, whatever, I can get the money back fairly easy, I'll just farm it. So that's not the problem. The problem is when you are sent far back, to the point where you have a long run back to the boss fight. It feels antiquated. I get that it was a Dark Souls 1 thing, it was a Dark Souls 2 thing. Dark Souls 3, for example, there's bonfires much nearer the bosses. This game, and it feels like at this particular point where it's like runbacks aren't, I don't find that stuff fun. What I like going for the areas, I like dealing with the challenge, but when I get to a boss and I die, I want to get back into that boss as quick as possible. I don't want to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes going back to the boss, potentially getting my money back, and then also fighting the boss. Right? I don't feel that mechanic is particularly fun. It definitely feels like my time's being wasted, and I say feels because you're either going to like this mechanic or you're not. Right? I'm not saying it's a bad mechanic. I don't like it. I've never liked it in games because when you want to hit retry, you want to hit continue, you want to be there and there ready to get straight back into it. And instead you've then got to deal with a run back. It might not even be difficult, just long. Long jumping around. And I get it, you open up shortcuts and lifts and things as you go. But it's not something that I enjoy. Because my time right now is focused on trying to do the boss, it's focused on learning the boss patterns. As soon as I'm taken out of that, and I have to do that, I'm like, great, you're pulling my attention in other ways. In fact, in this point, this is where I stopped, because I was like, I don't enjoy this element of the game. Everything else I could kind of tolerate, but now I've died, I have to go all the way back to this place, and now I've got to deal with getting to there again. And it's just not something that I find fun, right? Some people will like it, some people like that challenge. The game's already difficult. I don't need it to be more difficult because, they're like, oh, you die, you go back to like an area where there's no enemies. It's like, no, get me back into the boss fight. Like, that's the bit, that's the enjoyable part, right? The boss fights in the game I actually really like. But I don't want to have to deal with that intermission, if you will, between going from the bench to the boss fights. So, and it could well be that there's another bench closer to the boss fight, but because I don't know it's there, or haven't found it, that's irrelevant, right? I'm going from where I am in the game to it. So I think that particular part of the game doesn't feel good, or at least for me doesn't feel good. And I've just accepted that, like, this is the problem with having these Souls-like mechanics in the game. Like, the whole dropping money thing, for example, is only annoying because you've got to spend money on maps, on map markers, on some benches, which I don't know if I agree with. Opening up some areas. Like, they give you money to spend in certain places, that bit I get. But I'm just like, I've never enjoyed the idea of dying, dropping all my money, essentially, and then having to go get it back. In this game, it doesn't feel particularly great. It's not really a challenge, but it's just it feels more of an annoyance. Again, personal preference, right? Like, I just don't enjoy those mechanics. So, we have that part of it. And then we have the actual money, like I said, spending it on things like accessing some areas, accessing some benches, obviously killing your corpse, essentially, or your ethereal form, to get that stuff back and use it. I don't like it. Like, that's a straight up, I just don't like it. That's a personal preference, right? I'm hoping by talking about these things again that I am bringing up stuff here that people can see, that I'm not here to rag on the game. I'm not saying the game is bad, right? A lot of these elements are more to do with the fact that there's a lot of choice here by Team Cherry, and I personally think it hurts the game more than it does improve it. I think the map, while a personal thing, just does not feel good compared to other games. I don't know why you would want to fiddle with the map in such a way to make it more complex, especially for a new player. It just feels bad. Like, on subsequent playthroughs, I'm sure it's fine. My biggest issue is more the fact that there are issues with the foreground and background overlapping and stuff like that. I fall on the game like this. I think there is a good game in there, and I think that this game is not designed for me. As far as Metroidvanias go, like Metroid or Castlevania, Mummy Demastered. Like there's tons of Metroidvanias as I've played. This is not one that suits my playstyle, right? And I'm not even talking about the difficulty of the game. I have no issue with the difficulty of the game. I have no issue with learning boss patterns or anything like that. Like I quite like that. But the things like the map, the lack of direction, the checkpointing, they just all kind of accumulate to a point where I'm like, I feel like I can't be bothered. I got way further in the game this time, and I'm glad that I did, and I'm glad that I managed to enjoy mostly what I played. But this is just a game that is going to be divisive. It's going to be divisive. I'm not going to sit here and say it's bad. It's not a bad game, right? It's a good game. But I can't say that I'm ever going to play this again. Or, you know, even with the thoughts of trying to play the sequel to see if the sequel has improved some of this stuff, right? Like, that might be something I still look at. But I wanted to replay this one because I don't think I did a very good job the first time round explaining my issues with the game. This time round, I think I've done a better job. And I think that people will see that, like, in terms of like how the graphics overlap background, foreground, and the lighting and stuff, that's a genuine problem for some players. For me, I think that's an actual problem with the game. Some people aren't going to be bothered by it. Same with the sound ducking. I think that's a genuine problem, but a toggle would have fixed that, right? Like, cool. The rest of it, like I said before, moment-to-moment gameplay good visuals, decent music, sound design's pretty good. Like, there's a lot of stuff like that where I'm like, there's a good game here. But when you make mechanics feel a little bit obtuse, when you make it feel a bit empty or directionless, I should say, and your checkpointing feels a bit antiquated, it definitely makes it very difficult for me to keep playing. I don't want to keep, like, even if I die on the boss 10 more times and don't do it, that's not the issue. I don't want to run back to the boss that much. I want to checkpoint there and then, and I want to just do it, right? And like I said, the map, the pacing, the map, the checkpointing, spending money, dropping money, all the Souls-like mechanics, that's all personal preference, right? That is personal preference. But things like the first hour of the game, this game is not beginner friendly. Let's not pretend that it is. It's not a beginner friendly game, and it's definitely a game you recommend to somebody that's more into Metroidvanias. But I would not give this game to someone who's new to Metroidvanias. It's far too difficult. And that's not even talking about the actual difficulty of the game. It's just things around it are far too difficult. So I'm hoping that the people that disagreed with me can see that I'm not here crapping on the game. I don't think the game's bad, right? If you like this game, I'm actually really glad for you because you managed to get through it, and you, regardless of your thoughts on, or my thoughts even on some of these mechanics, you've had a good time and you played it, right? That's awesome. But I can't sit here and say anything other than this is a good game, but it's not a game for me. And there are things that I would love to see changed and fixed, right? That's kind of where I am with it. And the people that agreed with me the first time, right, don't feel like you need to go back and play it. I did it because I needed to know. I needed to know if I was just being way too harsh on the game, and I don't think I was. I think some of the elements, some of my original points, definitely were badly explained, right? Get that. But I think right now, having recently played it, having sat down and thought about it, and written out what I think, what is an actual problem with the game and what's a personal problem with the game, this is what I was able to come up with, you know. And I think overall I've done a better job explaining it, and I welcome the discussion in the comments, right? There are people that were more than happy to talk to me about it, whether they liked it or didn't like it, and they were completely polite about it. On the other hand, there were people that were really awful and came at me for absolutely no reason, and they know who they are, right? And if you are those people, right, take a step back, realize I am not attacking your game that you love. I am merely stating how I feel about it in a much better way this time around. And that's how I feel about Hollow Knight, right? I have nothing but respect for Team Cherry. I'm so glad that this did really well. I'm so glad that Silksong did really well. But as a Metroidvania, is it a top 10er? Absolutely not. Not in my books. I don't even think it's a top 20 game. I think there's a really strong game in there, but it will never be a game that I'm going to be like, oh yeah, put on a pedestal. Because there's too many issues around it and things that feel needlessly difficult on a game that's already difficult. And that's fine, right? Like, I'm allowed to think that. I'm allowed to be like that. I respect the game, and anyone who likes it, like, good for you, because there's a good game in there. And I'm glad you've been able to overcome what I consider to be problems, but you've obviously enjoyed the experience, so awesome. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me today then. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you like the video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more content on just anything like platformers, stuff like that, then hit the subscribe button, stick around. I am going to encourage comments in this video because I do think that there's a discussion to be had politely. Let's have a discussion politely, because it's obviously a bit of a divisive thing that I'm talking about here, but I'm open to hearing what people have to say. Anyway, until next video, I will see you then.